One. Welcome back to the Rev Health Radio Podcast. Dr. Ryan back here today with a very special guest, Ann Flood from Ann Flood Mindful Counseling out of Des Moines, Iowa. She's a mental health practitioner and started her own practice last year, helping people work through some issues. So, Ann, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Ann, why don't you tell your story, how you got to where you are from your early career in athletics to where you are now, helping people with their mental health.
Oh, the whole story you want?
Cliff Notes version, just real brief.
Okay, I'm a licensed mental health counselor. And I've been doing this for about 3 years. And I went back to school later because I had a late diagnosis of ADHD in my 40s. And so I never finished college until then. And started my own practice in October. Born and raised here in Des Moines. Really have reflected on my own life and my marriage and use it all in therapy with other people. Always loved the subject of psychology. I don't know. What else do you want to know?
Tell me how you got to helping people. How did you get to help realizing that mental health was an issue with people and why you wanted to pursue helping them?
Well, as I was reflecting back on my life, I have always been in areas where I've helped people. So I had 4 children. I was the mother of 4 daughters, and I was the leader of everything. I was the Girl Scout leader. I was a coach. I was the volunteer. As they got older, I found myself going into other helping jobs. I worked at Lutheran Services. I did refugee resettlement here in Des Moines. I love people. I love working with people. And when I was younger, I actually did study psychology as an undergraduate degree, and I was talked out of it by my parents because people were like, you can never find a job in that. You need to be a teacher or you need to go into business. So of course I complied and listened and did that, and it never left me. And so I just decided in my 40s, I'm going to go back and do that. I'm going to take a class here and there. And I think once you find something that you really love, it pulls you along. It was not to say that it was easy, but I couldn't stop. Once I started studying psychology and once I got into grad school, there was no way that I was going to stop it. I had like a single focus.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm putting it together. So yeah, you were talked out of a psychology degree because there's no jobs in that as an undergrad, and had a few probably bounced around a few different jobs. And then in your 40s, you went back and got your master's of clinical health coaching or clinical health counseling.
Clinical mental health counselor.
Gotcha. And that's where you put the pieces together of like, oh no, this is actually very important. People need help with this. I like helping people. How can I blend the two things? Is that what drew you back to get your master's in your 40s?
It did. And I had some ideas about what kind of counselor I wanted to be. I went through some marital counseling with my ex-husband, and that didn't go so well. And then after I got divorced, I went through some counseling, and I didn't feel like it was transparent enough for me. I wanted to know what we were doing. Like, where are we going? How am I going to feel better? I want to feel better. And the person that I was working with couldn't answer that question. And that felt very frustrating for me. So I was actually in grad school at the time, and it really focused my goal on I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be a counselor that's kind of meandering or can't answer. If somebody asks me the question, what are we doing here? I have an answer for that.
Transparency, something I value very highly. That's very interesting. And the other thing we've talked about before the call was purpose. That was another thing of why the person is in front of you, what's their purpose, and having transparency with clients. Is that how you work with clients one-on-one or group setting, or how does that work now with your new business that you started last year?
Yeah, I do groups, and then I do individual therapy, and I work with couples. If it's relevant, I will share my own life. The group that I work with is women divorcing and separating. And so I'll share my story of how painful that is and how there is light at the end of the tunnel, but it's a process. And I'll share my own life in session with clients if it's relevant. So that I like to look at therapy as it's just 2 human beings sitting there, that I'm not the expert, that this is just 2 people talking. My client is the expert in their life. And where are they stuck and where can they make a pivot and what do they value and how can they have a more valued way of living. And it's scary. And so the real work is the committed action that happens after that, of prompting and prompting and prompting. Did you do it? And I will say, I can talk to you for an hour and you can vent to me, but that's not going to help you. The work is the other 6 days when you're outside. Like, I know it's scary, but step outside your house and go do that thing that you want to do.
And that is no different than what I do from a physical standpoint. Physical therapy is the same way. Our 1 hour isn't going to fix you. We need to put in some work outside of that hour.
Absolutely.
But I want to ask another question, circling back to what you just said, because I'll describe a situation that happens to me, and I'm curious it happens to you, where I don't know if there's a relatability, or maybe people see us because we're professionals as we are like Superman. So people are shocked to learn that I have neck pain all the time. And you're a physical therapist and you have neck pain. And I'm like, yeah, I have my stuff too. Like, I manage it the best I can. And do I do everything that I should? No, I shouldn't, but I know the things I need to do and I try to stay on top of it. Do people relate to you because they realize they expect you have they would expect you to have a perfect marriage, and like, wow, you went through a divorce. That's crazy. Is that the same, where they're kind of shocked that you've been through some different things where you've needed counseling, or not necessarily because you're a mental health professional? Do they think that you have all the answers, or?
I think it increases the trust and rapport because I try to present myself as humanly as possible. I struggled for so many years, in college and years after that with ADHD and all the symptoms and all the things that go along with that. Not being able to finish anything. And so, yeah, I share that with clients because I make mistakes. I make mistakes in scheduling sometimes. And my clients will come to me and I'll be like, God, I really messed up, and they're like, hey, don't talk to yourself like that. They start to talk to me like a counselor. So yeah, my goal is I'm human, they're human. I want to make you, eventually the goal is to make you your own therapist, to get the psychological flexibility. And that the change that you're looking for is a process. It doesn't happen in here. Life is full of all kinds of changes. We have this like false belief that we can control things. And things in life pop up and it's unexpected and we get divorced or somebody dies and we really don't have control. And just to kind of hold that is very freeing, right? I don't have any control over this. I can just take this day one day at a time and I can work as hard as I can with my clients and try to see them and see their struggles.
I totally agree. And yeah, control what you can control. It kind of brings me back to another thing I think we've mentioned in a previous talk, where I think one of your mantras also, life is always changing and I can always grow. How did you come to that? Or what do you mean by that?
I was reading some philosophy, existentialism, and I don't know, it just hit me hard that, yeah, like we do try to change. I think as a mother of 4, I try to make things as steady as possible. When I was young, I was like a completely different person. I want things to be safe. I want to protect these children. I want them to do well. And then once they grew up, it's like, well, that's a difficult transition. That's things that I share. Like, kids grow up and leave. That's really hard. People don't talk about that.
Yeah, I think the part that hit me is some of the best parenting advice I actually got from a high school football coach I was working with, because he had daughters that were in high school at the time and I had 2 little ones. And he goes, Ryan, the thing you need to realize is you need to let your kids fail. You cannot do everything for them. And if you do, it will get worse. You need to let them figure things out and let them fail, and they will learn from that. And I was like, that is so profound in so many ways of, yes, especially as a parent and especially a mother of 4, you wanted to provide everything for your kids, and you tried to, and then you realize that life is always changing. You really want to build kids that are resilient, that can figure things out on their own, that can put in the work. And the same thing I think both of us do for our clients as well, as we want to build people that are resilient. Yeah, something stirs up, have a plan to approach it, become your own counselor, or have strategies yourself. Don't just rely on me and you have to come to me for every single problem. Yes, if it's severe, certainly reach out, but have some tools to take care of your own problems, which is something I related to in the first time that we talked.
Yeah, I have this framed thing in my house that says, don't prepare the road for the child. Prepare the child for the road.
That is fascinating because a previous podcast I talked with one of my friends, Eric Dominguez, and he did the same. He mentioned the same thing where parents, it seems like we want to do everything for our kids and we never take time for ourselves, whether it's
Yeah.
our own physical health, whether it's our own mental health. We always put that secondary to whatever our kids need. That's a natural instinct,
Mhm.
but that then our health suffers, whether it's our physical health, whether it's our mental health. I'm guessing based off your reaction, you see the same thing in clients you see where they're so focused on their children and doing everything for them. And then boom, the traumatic experience happens is where they leave and they're gone. And then you're an empty nester. Is that something you see commonly with people that struggle with that?
I think it's true. I mean, I think people feel that. You just fall into that. You don't think about it. You just fall into this child-focused living and think that you don't have any time. I mean, there is like just constantly, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have, and I just say, I don't believe you that you don't have time. I think that that is a way to avoid life. Sometimes when you have kids, you're like, well, I don't have time to go learn how to rock climb because I've got these kids. And it's like, really? You don't have time? Did you watch those that series on Netflix last weekend? Those 7 episodes? You don't have time? So I can be pretty pushy sometimes. I don't I know that there's time, but I know when people are using that as an excuse to not really step out.
Yeah, it's a crutch. We all have our
Mhm.
crutches that we fall back on. One of my crutches that I feel strongly about, especially some females I work with who are scared to lift weights because they say they're going to get bulky. And I immediately say, I don't think you actually believe that. I think what you really mean is that you don't know what to do and you don't want to look stupid because you don't know what to do or get hurt and you don't want
Huh.
to ask for help. Therefore, you say you don't want to get bulky, but really you just don't know what to do and you need someone to help you. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, you're right. I just don't want to look like an idiot at the gym in front of all the guys that are staring at me. I'm like, yeah, I totally understand that. Not a good environment for you to learn how to lift weights in. And that'll bring me
Oh,
back
I
to
love that you addressed that because it's really hard for women in the weight room and just
one.
learning and getting stronger and you are going to get bigger, but you do get stronger. I mean, the strength is the big piece. Like it's great to be strong.
Yeah, that's one of my mantras too. We don't get old, we get weak. And it's like
Mhm.
keep strength as long as possible. I was talking to one of my friends at the gym, actually. She was a female and a medical provider. And she came 10 years ago, was a marathon runner, and then sought out some coaching to lift weights. And she goes, now it's great. She goes, now when I'm at Lifetime working out in the weight room with my headphones on, if a guy like walks in front of my weights, I stare him down. And it's like, what the heck are you doing? She goes, 10 years ago, I would have clammed up like and just wanted to crawl into my shell. And now she goes, I
Yeah,
almost want to fight someone of like, why are you stepping in my area? I'm trying to lift these weights. And I'm like, that is so odd. The confidence I appreciate so much. And I love that so much.
I
Um,
love that. I love walking this path with people and seeing them get stronger in all areas of their life. And
my
just reminding them, like they forget. It's like, well, we've been working together for 20 weeks. And it's like, do you realize that when we started, this is where you were? And now you've lost weight and you're mentally healthy and psychologically flexible. All these things have changed. Do you realize that? And that can be really powerful too.
that same thing happens with me. And I don't know if it's just the nature of where we work, where we're kind of or maybe people in pain bring negativity towards me. Someone will come in and I'm like, oh, how's your week going? Oh, I got my little my neck's tight, or this has happened. I'm like, whoa, just so we're on the same page. Like 6 weeks ago, you couldn't go down the steps because your knee hurt so bad. That's all better, right? Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. This little neck tightness, yeah, whatever. That's a pretty minor thing. Remember, 6 weeks ago when you couldn't walk down the steps, yeah, we've come a long way. Don't forget that part as well
Yeah.
of how far we've come. There's always a negative thing we can focus on, but
I feel like you and I should have offices right next to each other. Don't you?
yeah, I think
The physical is such an important piece of this for me. I just was in a symposium in DC a couple weeks ago, and this new thing that adds on to ACT therapy, which is what I do, is called process-based therapy. And it's so cool. It talks about making negative moves or positive moves in different areas of emotion or thinking. Like I used my thinking in the way my thinking got in the way of things that are important to me, or I use my thinking in ways that help me live better. And just like putting this up on the fridge, like mindfulness, I struggled to connect to moments in my day, or I paid attention to important things in my daily life. Like you got to be present in your life. And emotion is always really a tricky one. I did not find an appropriate outlet for my emotions, or I was able to experience a wide range of emotions appropriate to the moment. That's hard for people. They're uncomfortable with emotions.
Yeah, it's really the mindset shift. It's kind of, I mean, it's really kind of glass half full, glass half empty way of looking at things of like,
Yeah.
yes, you could have a negative view on this, but, or you could spin that as a positive. Um,
Mhm.
I agree that we should have offices next to each other. And I actually feel like I work inside of a mental health clinic because I'm
Yeah.
inside a gym, a CrossFit gym. I think that's one of my biases is if someone who goes and does a really hard workout for 60 minutes, that's a form of mental health training because the rest of their day isn't so bad. It's actually pretty easy. If you can mentally get through that, then you can get through a lot of different things. Or some people use that as an anger outlet or other things. But I 100% agree that we are striving for the same thing with people on a physical and or sometimes even just mental side. I would say physical therapists in general, we feel like counselors at time because we spend so much time with people. The body takes so long to actually make changes and to teach it how to move differently that we just spend so much time compared to other healthcare providers that people see us as a mental health, someone they can talk to, someone of which I have zero training. I have a psychology minor, but I have no training in mental health or
Hey,
anything like that.
endorphins are real.
I 100%, I agree. If
That's
you could
my endorphins are my antidepressants. So yeah, that's a real thing.
talk more about that psychotherapy symposium in DC. So you mentioned ACT therapy. That's kind of what you use. What's that based off of, or is there a framework you use when you work with clients?
Well, it's Stephen Hayes is a researcher, and it's very much science-based, and it's based on it's an approach that uses mindfulness and meditation, just being present in your life. And ACT it stands for acceptance and commitment therapy. And so we use mindfulness and meditation to just accept where we are. Not accept is kind of not the best word because people can get stuck in that, but it's like, here's where I am. I'm overweight, I'm sluggish, I'm drinking too much, I have a bad relationship with my spouse. This is where I am right now. Okay. And what do I value? Am I living a valued life? Am I in a career that challenges me in a meaningful way? Am I connected with the people that are important to me? Am I able to experience a wide range of emotions? Am I able to pivot when I need to? And then we commit to a more valued, and the commitment part's the difficult part. That's where, people have a lot of anxiety, depression. And I don't use the word anxiety and depression. I use the word fear or sadness. I'm very, my language is emotion based because I don't like the diagnosis terms. We have to use it to get paid by insurance companies, but it's just not human, right? And it's a way to get prescribed drugs. And I'm not a big fan of that either. So then we commit, and we have to, and that's a lot of times where I'll share my own story. It's scary to get divorced, but this isn't working. And it feels wobbly for a while. It's a process. It's like a year or two long process to kind of feel balanced again. So I'll share those kind of stories like, hey, I've done this. This is hard. It is hard, but here's where you are. And you got to walk through your anxiety or fear, and get to the other side. And one of my favorite children's books was, I can't think of the title of it, but you can't go over it. You can't go under it. You have to go through it. It's just like a series of pages where the person's like, I want to go around. And it's like, nope, you can't, you got to go through it. So I'll use stories like that. But at the symposium, the person who developed ACT therapy, it kind of added onto it with what's called process-based therapy, that life is a process. And there's all these different areas, and finding meaningful ways to challenge yourself, whether you do or don't. These are questions you have to ask. There's 7 areas, and it involves emotion, cognition, thinking, mindfulness, social connection, motivation, and just overt behavior, right? You got to find ways, personally important ways to challenge yourself, not the way other people do. So in health, health is the final piece where he just talks about movement, not going to the gym, but movement, diet, plant-based diet, and getting enough sleep. It's like these little things that people don't do, right? And they say, I don't like going to the gym. I don't want to do that. No, well, go into the woods, go for a walk, go work in your garden, go mow the lawn. That's movement. You don't have to, there's such a narrow definition of what we should be doing to be healthy. And it's really interesting when I open it up to people. And then the final 2 points are, he talks about variation, and that's basically just your ability to pivot, to know when you're stuck, right? And to be able to pivot out of that, to use your thinking and emotions to kind of inform you. I think I'm stuck. I think I'm in this rut after work every night. I think I'm having a rut where I'm not exercising. I'm having a beer and chips in front of the TV. And then your ability to retain like strategies that seem to have worked. And you
That
just kind of go through this all the time, each week you go through it. Are you doing these things? Is your thinking helping you, or is your thinking not? Are you finding a place for your emotions? Are you feeling a wide range of emotions? Because if you don't feel sadness, you're not going to feel joy.
That's profound. So yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Rather than just listening to someone vent, which you very well could do and see people a very long time to just listen to the vent, but unless they figure out why you're there and there's transparency there, and to figure out doing a self-assessment, that's how you really get to the root of their problems, and you help them find the root of their problems going through that. Is that what I'm hearing? And then based off the root of the problem of what they need to do to change daily habits, or week and check in weekly of, okay, self-assess, was that better?
I'll usually start off with like talking about their childhood. What was that like? What did your brain develop on? Right? Which kind of gives you a sense of what's their attachment style. So my brain developed on 2 parents that got divorced 3 times. So I have a very anxious attachment style, and that's not going anywhere. I just know that about myself. And so I'll say to my partner, Al, he'll go back to Ames for a couple of days, and I'll say, my brain's telling me that this relationship's over. And he'll laugh and he'll be like, no, it's not. But, to really know yourself, that this feeling is real, because that's what my brain developed on. It changes a little bit, it gets better, but it's about knowing yourself. I don't want to go to that party. That feels very uncomfortable for me.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
and killing comfort, sometimes acknowledging that and pushing through
Yeah.
comfort, and knowing when to do that or when to stay away from discomfort, and knowing when that's appropriate for either your mind or your body.
Mhm.
um, I will touch base just because I'm very passionate about the movement side. That's what I do every day. Yes, people think that they have to go to the gym for an hour, drive there, drive back. Like that's the only exercise they're doing. And I'm like, the
Yeah.
bigger one is the term NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, of just moving burns calories. Like, what is your NEAT? Did you go on a walk? Did you do the dishes, or did you just let them sit there? Did you do some housework? Did you go outside? Did just non-exercise activity thermogenesis burn so many calories, or which helps people with weight loss, which helps whatever, get your NEAT under control before you even think about starting a formal exercise program. Because there's been some research on that too in my world, of the ergonomic side of just 1 hour of exercise in the middle of an 8-hour sitting day does not counteract all the negative effects sitting can have on your body. So just
Yeah.
getting that hour in isn't enough. Like, it's better than nothing, yes, but it's still not enough. We still need to move and get moving. I don't want to come back to, because I have not heard of the framework of not using the term anxiety and using the term fear. Talk to me about those two again. So instead of anxiety, you would prefer to use the word fear, and when do you use, what was sadness?
Instead of depression, I've just used sadness.
Mm,
I have a big emotion wheel. It has all the words on it, but I try to drill it down to anger, fear, and sadness, because people are uncomfortable with emotion words. And there is real anger, that if there's an injustice, anger can pop up, but usually anger can be drilled down to fear or sadness. Are you afraid, or is this sad? So in conversation, I'll give you an example in my personal life. So with my partner, Al, he will talk over me occasionally. And I had to have the conversation with him. When you do that, I don't know if you're aware, always with a soft opening, I love you. I don't know if you're aware, inside, I am enraged. I am so angry right now. And I've thought about it, and that goes back to my entire life. My mother talked over me, my father talked over me, my husband talked over me. I cannot do that anymore. I need you to know my inner world, right? And then I circled back a couple of weeks later because he kept doing it. And then I was shutting down. He talked over me, I shut down. And I noticed that. That's mindfulness. I noticed, oh, I'm shutting down. I'm doing that thing I did in my marriage. I'm doing that thing I did with my mom. I'm shutting down because they're not listening. They're talking over. So then I circled back and had that conversation with him. And I said, when you talk over me, it actually makes me sad because that's been happening my entire life. And maybe there's a negative core belief that what I have to say is not important. True intimacy happened at that moment where he really saw that. He said, oh, I didn't know that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be careful.
That's what a good way to explain mansplaining all on one time of someone trying to talk over you and explain things. And trust me, while you were talking, I purposely muted my mic so I didn't start talking after you said that, so I wouldn't interrupt and let you.
I think it's a guy thing for sure. Yeah, it happens. Sorry, I don't want to. Now you're all nervous about it.
No,
now you don't want to talk.
No, not even close. I was thinking of where I wanted to go next, because I really like that of reshifting and not just using anxiety and depression, because yes, those are diagnoses that are becoming way more prevalent, and it seems like everyone is using those terms or is on medication for those terms. I see it in my world where almost everyone is on some type of anxiety or depression medication, which has some side effects, sometimes even musculoskeletal, where I'll look at, I'm like, yeah, maybe this chronic muscle pain is actually from that medication you started and your body just doesn't like it. Maybe we need to either try to get off of it or try a different one, something like that. If some things that I do don't work, is something that I use. Where do you see the field of mental health or mental health coaching going? It seems like there's less of a negative stigma about it. We're becoming more aware. Do you see more people seeking it out? Do you see more one-on-one coaching, group coaching? How do you see that field?
I think there's a shortage of mental health therapists. When I started my private practice in October, my biggest fear was I'm not going to have enough clients. And I quickly learned that that's not going to be a problem. I want to democratize it by doing more groups. Groups are hard. It's a lot of work. It's uncomfortable for people. They don't necessarily have to have a theme. It can just be humans coming together, learning how to share their inner worlds with using emotional terms, human terms. That's why I like to use, fear and sadness, because we're humans. Okay. That's normal. It's normal to have those feelings. Everybody has them. In a group setting, we can all share that and say, we all have felt that. Yes. And you're going to go out and do this thing.
And then in the group setting, yes, people don't share nearly as much, obviously, in a group, especially with people they don't know that well. But it's essentially finding, and similar to even a movement atmosphere, of finding a group where you all connect or have some connection point. It sounds like you have one with women that are going through a divorce, or finding a group of connection point people of, oh, you all went through this traumatic event, or you guys all fit together. I agree, because some of the problems I have when I think people need some type of mental health coaching is just the time it takes to get in. And is that something where there healthcare professionals and non-healthcare professionals that can do something similar? How does that field work when it comes to someone, whether it's in the medical system? Because you and I both know, once you're in a medical system, it's such a mess to deal with, whether it's insurance or just wait times. Because I've had people reach out even to Unity Point or one of the other hospitals, and it's like, oh yeah, it's an 8 or 12 week wait just to get in with one of their counselors. I'm like, that is crazy. You need help now. How do we approach that? Is it more going through training? Is it training more people? How can we help?
I don't know what the answer is to that. I think as a community, as a group of people, we all have to get psychologically flexible. How can we do this better? And how can we teach kids in school emotional intelligence? All of the things that they need to know, so that there's upstream. You need to eat, you need to move, you need to sleep better, all of the pieces that you and I are, it's very common sense for us. I'm shocked how it's not common sense for people. They don't know
I
that
never
they
thought
need
of,
to move and they eat well and that they need to sleep and that they've never really thought about their thoughts, thinking about your thoughts. Your thoughts aren't necessarily true, right?
Mhm.
I always say, I'm having the thought. Isn't that interesting? I don't know if that's true, right?
The brain is very complex. Sometimes it plays tricks on us and we have a thought and we might not even,
It's
and pain
helping
is no
us
difference.
survive. It's helping us survive. That's the job of the brain, is to
Yeah. And especially,
avoid fear, avoid things that scare us.
yeah, our brain is literally hardwired to do that. And it's
Mhm.
evolved like that over a very long period of time. But yeah,
Mhm.
that was a complicated question to end on, of where the field of mental health professionals go. I have a few people I'm hoping to bring on the podcast to continue to help get the word out for people
Yeah.
to seek help, especially in the Des Moines area. I've met some really cool people to help refer out to, you being one of them. If someone in the Des Moines area is listening to this and wants to work with you or wants to seek out help from you, how do they do that, Anne?
They can email me at annflood.mindful@gmail.com. And I can set up an appointment and we can get started.
That sounds great. We talked about a lot of good things today, especially some things that connect us. Transparency is very important to me. Just being transparent of what we're working towards from a physical or mental standpoint is something I connected with you. Putting in the work on your mental health or mental resiliency is no different than physical resiliency. And teaching them how to take care of themselves, teaching them how to do self-assessments, teaching ways to have lifelong ways to become mentally resilient and deal with different emotions and making sure they're feeling different things. So we learned a lot. Thanks for joining me today, Anne. It was a pleasure to have you on. And to everyone
Thank you for
listening,
having me. Yeah, thank you. This is fun.
thanks for listening. We'll check you out at the next episode.
All right. Bye-bye.